Hello and welcome to Ahead of the Curve. This is your host, Jonathan Gelner, and thank you so much for joining us today. This episode is brought to you by Motor Preference Experts. Ready to elevate your performance? Meet Motor Preference Experts, the premier authority on natural motor preferences in North America. Discover how understanding your innate balance and coordination can optimize your performance and minimize injury risk. Whether you're passionate about playing, coaching, or strength and conditioning, dedicated experts will guide you to respect and enhance your body's natural motricity. Explore more at motorpreferenceexperts.com. Motor Preference Experts, helping you to become the best version of yourself. On today's show, we have on Pete Egbert, head baseball coach at Misericordia University. Pete is entering his 18th year at Misericordia, and he led the Cougars to the first ever national championship in school history last season. They finished 44-11 while setting a school record for wins in a season. They also won their 11th MAC Freedom Championship and captured NCAA Regional and NCAA Super Regional titles. Pete has won 509 games for the Cougars and owns a career record of 600, 330, and 2 in 22 seasons as head coach. On the show, we discuss what set this year's national championship group apart. Pete discusses their cultural development, and he takes a deep dive into how to win the preseason in the North with inclement weather. You're going to love this episode with Pete Egbert. Pete, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Definitely. So, I was talking to you a little bit off the mic. We are kind of in the dog days of July and about to start hitting it hot and heavy again. And, you're going to get guys, and I guess we're both going to get guys on campus in the next month. So I want to rewind before we go forward. So tell us a little bit about last year's group. Obviously, you guys ended the season on a win and were national champs. What really separated that group from other groups that you had that did not get that opportunity?
I think it was a combination of things. It was the most veteran group that we had by far in my career. We had 6 graduate students decide to come back and get their degree and play another season. We very rarely have that happen here. It's just not a place where we have guys stay for the 5th year very often. But because of COVID, and we have an MBA program, 5 of the 6 completed their MBA, and the 6th came back to get an advanced degree. So we had that, and then we had a number of other seniors who contributed pretty heavily. But with that comes experience, leadership. We had three graduate students in particular, our right fielder and leadoff hitter, Garrett McElhaney, our first baseman, Jason Sanfilippo, and one of our starting pitchers, David McCurry, who just kind of led the team all year long. And they had a good pulse on what I'm looking for and what we had done in the past. And we were in the World Series the year before, and those 6 guys in particular were really hungry, not only to get back, but to try and take it a step further. And we were fortunate enough to be able to do that.
No, I love that. So, this let's say this time last year, you knew you had that veteran group coming back. Did you meet with those guys and just kind of go over what you wanted the season to look like and just kind of give a lot of ownership to them? Because, like I said, you said it's the most veteran group you've had, so I'm assuming you relied on them a lot. So can you tell us about probably what that looked like, or they just already knew the routine and you just kind of let them go?
Yeah, one of the things that I've learned over my career is I think the best organizations are run from within, and certainly I'm there to provide the guidance. But these guys, they knew what they wanted to execute. They knew, what I wanted to have happen. So there weren't a lot of meetings. There weren't a lot of conversations. It was just kind of understood. And from day one, as soon as we were done playing, they took a week or 2 off, and then they started getting in touch with the incoming freshmen and making sure that the summer workouts were going well and that everybody was doing what they needed to do because they were hungry. And I think that translated into the start of the year. So I kind of stayed out of the way and just let them do their thing. And occasionally we'd interject and give some guidance or some suggestions, but for the most part, again, because they had been around the program for so long, they knew what the expectations are. And that's another thing that I think, getting back to your first question, that was a little bit of difference for this group, is just the level of accountability within the team was tremendous. I didn't have very many off-field problems, and if there was a guy who wasn't holding up his end of the bargain, he was going to get called out by his teammates before he got called out by me. So if somebody didn't go to a class, or somebody didn't do what they needed to do in a weight room session, or any number of things that just didn't happen along the way, those things were addressed within the team. And that's another thing that I thought made this team special. So I didn't really have to interfere with that process. They just knew what to do. So hopefully going forward, some of our younger guys learned from that and are able to take that and run with it.
I love that. So did you graduate quite a bit?
We did. We graduated. We really graduate 67% of our innings and about 40% of our at bats. With 6 grad students, 2 seniors, and then we lost another one to the transfer portal.
Okay. So with that, you've got this new group coming in, and you've got some of them that have seen that success that you guys had last year, that were able to be a part of it, and they know what it takes. So what has this summer for you looked like, as far as, I think, most coaches take the summer to decompress for a little while, and then you start to reflect on, how can I make this next team a success, or successful and a success. So what does that kind of look like for you personally? And then we can just kind of talk about what you want the fall to look like, or we can, maybe last fall we can go into some different things. But using the summer to reflect, what do you envision this next group like? How do you want to get started with them next month?
Believe it or not, Jonathan, I really haven't started that process yet. I'm fully aware that this the success of this past year isn't going to happen every day, so I'm trying to enjoy that as long as I can.
It's even better, yeah.
Obviously, being a competitor and with what we do, there's a little bit of foresight in terms of what we have coming back and the new guys, and trying to fit them into the system. But it really was important for me to not only enjoy this personally and professionally, but for our guys to do that too. We had played into the start of June, which never happens. And I wanted our guys to take some time off. I think they needed a physical break. They needed a mental break. Sure. We played at 55 games. They played 8 games in 7 days to end the season. So I wanted them to enjoy that. And then with that, so many other things happened because of us winning. Other people reached out to us, and we had some public events to attend. And so some cool things have happened
Sure.
as a result of the success. So I wanted the guys to enjoy that and not really worry about that. So, July 1st came, and then we started to think about it, but then the holiday got here, and I said, you know what, let's take another week or two. And so
Sure.
we're really into mid-July before I've really started to put pen to paper and decide, what we're going to look like going forward. So I don't anticipate that our fall is going to be too different than it has in the past. At the Division III level, the rules changed a little bit last year to allow us to have a little bit more practice time. So we're still trying to navigate through that and figure out what that looks like. But for the most part, we're going to start to transition into thinking about that. But, the summer is kind of just been enjoying this, and then getting out on the road and recruiting a little bit for that 25 class.
I love that. So that's a great idea. And I think, we could all take notes from taking some time off to be the best version of ourselves whenever we do get started. But let's go ahead and let's just rewind and let's recap, a national championship season starting, last fall. You said you're going to probably do a lot of similar things this upcoming fall, but since we haven't gotten there yet, let's take a rewind. So what does it look like for you guys when players get on campus? I know you mentioned you're probably not having to reteach a ton of stuff for a long period of time because you had such a veteran group. And again, this is just me speculating. But just kind of tell us what the big pillars were for you last fall. Like, what did you really want to accomplish? What was really important to you guys based on the team that you had, and just kind of walk us through, when those guys got on campus to, probably Thanksgiving-ish.
So for me, the fall is about competition and I want the guys competing as much as possible. Here in the Northeast, we deal with some weather issues in the preseason, so there are years where we don't get out on our field until our first game. And in fact, there was one year back in 2011 where we did not have a single practice on a baseball field until after our conference tournament. So that happens here, and that's real here. So for me, I want the guys playing as much as possible. I want to see what our returning guys have or haven't done over the course of the summer. I want to see what our new guys are capable of doing. We don't put a lot of our system in the fall. To me, the preseason, you can put your first and thirds and bunts and all that stuff in. For me, in the fall, I want them competing. I want to see what kind of adjustments they're able to make. Obviously, we will give them some pointers and some coaching points here and there, but I want to see them go after one another, and the guys like that. So for the most part, all of our practices during the week are BP scrimmages, machine scrimmages, execution scrimmages, where we're working on a particular thing that we emphasize, and then on the weekends, we let our guys go live and just get after each other. So that pretty much happens, mid-September through mid-October. We start school in late August. I intentionally give them 2 weeks before we start any organized baseball activity to kind of get their feet wet, particularly for the incoming freshmen. I just want to make sure that they're off to a good start academically and they've adjusted socially and to college life. Now, having said that, our group is highly motivated and they're out on the baseball field on their own every day, and I don't have to interfere with that. And they're, hitting and throwing and running and doing what they need to do to get ready for our fall season. But the weather's great in the fall. We've got, got to kind of sort through a lot of different things. So I just want to see them compete. And then we have a fall break here in mid-October. So that's kind of a natural transition for us. We end our fall season there. Guys go home for 5 or 6 days and kind of regroup. And then from then until Thanksgiving, we start up with the strength and conditioning stuff. It's important for me for them to get away from baseball at that time a little bit. If you think about it, we start our preseason January 20th or so, and then they go right into the season, right into summer ball, right into fall ball. So for me, the 12 months a year is just too much. I want them both physically and mentally taking some time off. So, yeah, we do have some guys in the cages and so on and so forth, but I want them doing very little of that. I want them doing no throwing for late October, November, and then they can start thinking about the baseball stuff once the year turns over again in January.
Love hearing that, and love being able for you to take us through what the fall looks like for you. And I don't know what the weather's like up there. I know it's the Northeast, and you mentioned that you guys really don't get a ton of time on a field. So when you get those guys back in January, are you indoors most of the time?
Yeah, so up until this past year, we had been in a gym, and that's pretty standard, and it was an okay space, and we had a batting cage in there, and we stuck portable mounds, but it's a gym, and obviously the game's not played there. This past February, the campus opened up a dome, so we have a 100-yard long by 55-foot yard wide turf dome with 2 permanent cages in it. So that's really changed things from a development standpoint for us, where we feel like our pitchers are ahead of the game. They can extend and long toss a little bit better than they had in the past. We have the opportunity to go live a lot more easily than we did in the past. So that's really helped us out. It's been a game changer.
Well, you get it 1 year and you win a national championship. You should be like, why didn't we have this earlier? Good grief.
Yeah, you can talk to my administration about that.
I will. You can send me this clip. I'll clip this for you. But no, I love that. And so when you send them home for a winter break, you guys probably have like a month. And I know that's kind of a stressful time for college coaches. But do you send them home with stuff to do, like throwing programs, lifting programs, things like that? Can you kind of take us into what that would look like?
Yeah, so as I said, our pitchers in particular, once our fall season is done, I want them to put the ball down for 60 days. And then right around December 15th, we have a gradual throwing program that's no different from anything anybody else does. And they, just start tossing, and then they start working on getting back in distance, and then, slowly back up onto a mound and into short stuff and so on and so forth. So that in hopes when they come back in mid to late January, they're able to throw 20 to 30 pitches, off a mound. And then same thing with our hitters.
Okay.
We give them a hitting program to follow day by day, and it just progresses up. I think because they're home, you worry about the defensive aspect of it, which we prioritize. I don't know that infielders and outfielders are getting the reps that they need or deserve, but it is what it is. And then obviously there's a strength program. Our strength program is pretty comprehensive, and at that time of year, we're kind of amping it up a notch and making sure that they come into preseason, in pretty good condition.
Okay. So with that, you guys spend a ton of time indoors. What are some different and effective ways that you guys have found to be able to win inside? Because like you said, baseball's not played in a gym, but you've got a lot of coaches that are listening that are in that same situation. So what are some different things that you guys really do to make your players better, spice things up, make sure they're getting the appropriate amount of reps, and also, trying to mimic the game as much as possible? What's your best advice?
Yeah, it's hard, and I think you need to stay true to yourself. And for me, again, the competition is kind of preempted everything. I want to make things as competitive as possible within the framework of what we had. And we talked off the air earlier, I'm not reinventing the wheel. I've stolen everything that I've gotten from somebody else, and I'm not smart enough to tell you exactly who I got it from. But, just as an example, our pitchers, bullpens can get kind of stale. So we do some different things within the bullpens. We play pig or we play horse, and, the first guy's got to spot up his fastball wherever he wants to, and then the next guy's got to match it. And if he doesn't, he gets a letter. And so we compete, and they love that type of environment, and that you can do as long as you have, two bullpen mounds and put them side by side. So we do stuff like that. From an offensive standpoint, we're trying to get as many reps as we can, but at the same time, get hitters ready for live stuff. I love stand-ins. I think it's boring. I think the kids, probably hate the stand-ins where they're just standing in on bullpens. But I think it's critically important from a pitch recognition standpoint. And you can't hit what you can't see. So I want our guys tracking balls as much as they can, and we use that as a station. I think sometimes that goes unnoticed. And then the pitchers like throwing when a hitter's in there. It allows them a visual aspect to work on their stuff and make sure that they're getting the action on the stuff that they want. We even cut the bat, so our hitters just have a bat handle in their hands, and we ask them to swing at certain pitches. So, if you have fastballs above the waist, you're only allowed to swing at a fastball that's elevated, and that way that tells us whether or not their tracking is working. So it just spices things up a little bit, makes it a little bit different, a little bit more competitive. We don't reinvent the wheel though. We're trying to work on the stuff that I think that we're going to execute day in and day out. So our infielders are not working on, diving plays very often. They're just executing the routine at a high level very consistently. But there are days where you need to spice things up, and you need to, try and simulate outfielders robbing a home run, or infielders, making crazy plays from their knees, or just to let them have fun and to spice it up and just to break up the monotony. But we're not doing that, very often, once a week or once every 10 days, where we just let them have fun. And then there are times where I ask guys, hey, what have you done in the past? And, do you have a drill or something that we can put in that you think the guys might like, or that might be productive for us? So I think it's a combination of a variety of different things. But in the Northeast, coaches have to get creative. I'm sure you've heard before, guys use hallways, guys use stairwells to do what they need to do. And that's just, you're kind of locked into the facilities that you have. You got to make the best of it.
So let's talk a little bit about the culture standpoint. So will this be year 18 for you guys? For you there?
It is. Yeah.
Okay. And then what's your staff look like?
So this coming year, for the first time, we'll get a full-time assistant, which I'm really, really excited about. In the past, we had a graduate assistant. We still get to keep that position. Essentially, our GA is a full-time position because the graduate classes here are offered online. So Garrett Demaray was our graduate assistant last year. He's going to transition into our full-time assistant role, and then we'll be able to add a graduate assistant. And then we've got 2 other part-time guys from the community.
Okay. So have you had some continuous people that have been there for a while, or in year 18, has it kind of been a little bit of a revolving door?
So I was fortunate for 12 years. I had a guy by the name of David Gargone who was a full-time faculty member on campus. He
Okay.
taught our sport management classes. He was with our pitchers for 12 years, and he's still on campus as a sport management faculty, but he gave up the baseball for a variety of reasons. So
Okay.
we haven't kept a ton of coaches other than him for more than 2 or 3 years, just because of the nature of how we're set up. But
Mm-hmm.
now I've got two local guys, Steve Holmes and Bill Gregory, who do a fantastic job. They're part-time, but they're up here full-time,
Mm-hmm.
especially during the season, and that's just the way it goes.
Sure.
So I'm hoping to keep them on forever, but just the nature of how we're set up, we have guys that transition in and out every 2 or 3 years.
Sure. No, I'm going to stop griping about having, four assistants here. And so with that, you have a lot of turnover. You've been a consistent, force there for, several years. I think it was 18, right? Is this year
Yeah.
18? Okay.
Yeah.
And, you've seen there's things that you've kept consistently. There's things that you have changed. And then with, a new group every year, culture is consistently shifting. So, with that, give us a little bit of a peek inside, what you want as a program. Like, what are the things that are important to you? What are the things that you guys really hammer? Because, like you mentioned, you were really one of the only full-time guy that was there, and you had, GAs and part-time guys, and you're lucky enough to have another one this next year. But you're the consistent person there. So, give us a peek inside what culture means to you, what that looks like on a daily basis, and maybe some different examples of what it looks like if we were going to come watch you guys practice.
Culture to me, and you've probably heard this, a million times before, but this is a great year for me to speak to this. I mean, I think culture is probably the most underrated element of anything. I mean, everybody's looking for the intangibles and the things that make your eyes pop when you go out recruiting, in terms of arm strength and bat speed and all those other things that they're looking at. And to be very frank with you, the longer I'm in this, the less I look at those things, and the more I'm looking at character and makeup, and all of those things go into building your culture. And I think that starts, I mean, as you reference, I mean, I have been here for 18 years, and unfortunately I haven't had assistants that have been here that long, but they've been a big part of creating our culture. For us, leadership is paramount to anything. I have a different leadership model than most, and one of my former GAs by the name of Andrew Bennett, and then David Gargone, the coach that was with me for 12 years, helped create our leadership model, which we've named All Nine all the time. Not too different than what anybody else does, but because there's 9 positions on the field and you play 9 innings, our guys in 2011, I guess it was, came up with 9 traits that we talked about on and off the field at all times that were important to our program. Communication being one of them. So we talk about what that means on the field, but we also talk a lot about what that means off the field, and how they're communicating with their faculty members, how they're communicating with their family, how they're communicating with the people that serve them lunch in the dining hall, all of those things. So there's 9 traits that we speak to all the time, and that's become our leadership model. We don't have captains. What we do is we ask our guys to evaluate themselves in each of those 9 traits once a month. And then we ask them to vote for one person on the team that's exhibited that particular trait the best that month. And the guys that lead the votes in those categories are your leaders, and those are essentially your captains. But for me, leadership and those types of things lead into the culture. And if you've got good leaders and you've got guys who are trying to make good decisions for the most part on and off the field at all times, then you're going to be in pretty good shape. That makes my job easier. And for me, I also think that if you're a captain, most captains are juniors and or seniors. You really only have an opportunity to learn to exercise your leadership skills for a year or two. I tell our freshmen, I want you to be leaders. Now there's certain things that they can't lead at, but there's certain things that they can lead. If I have a freshman come in and he's a good biology student and he can influence one of our juniors or seniors in his biology class, I want him to do that. And that's a good opportunity for him to start learning on his leadership or working on his leadership skills and being able to influence others in the program. Certainly, I don't expect the freshman to come in and, have all the on-field communication down his first fall. That's something that he's got to evolve into. But there are opportunities for all of our guys to lead. And my feeling is, if at the end of your 4 years, you can go to a prospective employer and say, hey, I worked on my leadership skills in this program for all 4 years, plus what I did in high school and what I learned with my family at home, that puts them in a better position. So all of that stuff builds into the culture that we have. We're very, very fast-paced at practice, on the field. It's tough to play against us. It's tough to defend against us just because we want to put pressure. So those are the things that are going to go into what we're doing on the field, but the off-the-field stuff and the culture piece and the decisions they're making off the field, I think those influence what's going on the field. And again, a huge reason that we had the success that we had this year.
So do you guys do a classroom setting to teach some of these skills?
Yeah, no doubt. There's some classroom stuff and, we don't, I'm not a huge fan of sitting them down for an hour or two and just lecturing at them. We introduce some things and then it's up to them to kind of figure it out. And I want them to internalize the leadership model. I know what communication means to me. I try very hard not putting my 2 cents in what it means to me. I want them to internalize that and say, okay, well, what does communication mean to me as a freshman or as a sophomore or as a junior? And it grows and it changes throughout the course of their career. And that's what we're trying to get at.
I love that. So with that, let's go over maybe an instance from last year or an instance that you've had in the past. And let's say that there has been a player that is not upholding a standard. Could be, something as simple as showing up on time or giving effort. What does that look like whenever do you defer that to the captains and have them handle that? And then, or do you handle that? What does that look like?
It depends what it is. It depends on the severity of it. We don't have too many rules in place in our program. We have a lot more standards. This past year, it was something that the veterans kind of took care of, and I didn't really need to intervene. In the past, and certainly at the start of my career and trying to build the culture, it was more of me having to bring guys in and saying, hey, you're not holding up your end of the bargain here. Let's go. You need to figure this out. And if you need resources from us or from people on campus to help you, then we'll do that. But most of the time, it's just a kick to say, hey, be true to yourself and look yourself in the mirror and just realize that you're not giving your best effort in this situation. So it just depends on the severity of it and what it is. We handle every situation a little bit differently. And then I'm also big on, fair is not always equal. I'm going to treat my 4th year senior a little bit differently than I'm going to treat the first semester freshman who's screwed up 2 or 3 times already on campus. You build a little bit of trust in that guy who's made all the right decisions for 3.5 years. And then all of a sudden he messes up his second semester senior year. Well, that guy, that conversation is going to be a lot different than the freshman who's already been in my office 2 or 3 times in his first month on campus.
I love that. So with that, let's go through just a couple of different things that you guys are doing for, maybe team building. I don't know. Do you guys recruit pretty regionally, locally? Do many of those guys know each other before they come in?
So most of the stuff is pretty regional, I would say, within 2 or 3 hours, although we're starting to expand a little bit. And with social media, even if they don't know each other, they start to know each other during the recruiting process, yeah.
Do you guys, besides, just time with each other, do anything that retreats or, get-togethers or anything that you guys do to really, develop the close-knit group aspect of it? And maybe whenever they get on campus, or you just, hey, let's go bowling this weekend, or, whatever you guys do?
We do a lot of that stuff, but none of it is dictated by me. A lot of the guys are just doing that on their own. I want it to happen naturally. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the best way for it to happen. In the past few years, most of our juniors and seniors have moved off campus into the local community and houses, and they share houses and stuff. I think they do a really good job of inviting the new guys over for, pasta dinners and cornhole, or to watch Thursday night football. And, I want those things to happen naturally. I don't want to
Okay.
force them. So we're doing a ton of those things, but it's not forced by anybody.
I like that. That's even better. With that, let's get into a little bit of preseason meetings and structures and players, stuff like that. Uh, do you guys have like structured set down meetings at any point in the year, and if so, when? And if so, what do those look like?
Again, over the years, I've started to do fewer and fewer of
Okay.
those. We do them at the end of the fall,
Okay.
and they usually only last 15 or 20 minutes, and the first 5 or 10 is me just getting information from the guys. I want
Okay.
them to evaluate themselves. I want them to evaluate the team. Usually, they're willing to share some pretty good information, and they know better than I know. Right? If something's going on off the field, they can share that with me. And I don't necessarily want them talking about their teammates, but I want some general perceptions of
Mm-hmm.
what the pulse of the team is and what's going on. So that's the first part of it. And then the second part of it is me evaluating, what I've seen. I would tell you 98% of the time, their evaluation and my evaluation match. And they know what their weaknesses are, and I just kind of reiterate that, and then maybe say, on top of that, you should think about this. We need more leadership from you, or you need
Okay.
to be able to go to your left better, or whatever the case might be. But almost always they've identified those. They're mature enough at their age to figure out what they do well and what they don't.
Okay.
But that's really the only forced one. I used to do 4 forced meetings a year: preseason, postseason, both fall and spring, with guys.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm just like, hey, my door is open. I'm fortunate enough where my office is located in our fitness center, so I see them on a daily basis, in and out, working out and stuff. So they're just going to come in again naturally, and before or after a workout, hey, what's going on? And then we start talking about whatever they want to talk about, and a lot of things come up during those natural meetings. So I've done less of the forced meetings. There are times during the season where you got to bring guys in, good or bad, and address some things, but a lot of times we can handle those things just out at practice.
No doubt. No doubt. So, with that, I love the open door policy and getting guys to come in. Was it when you first started that? Was that something that was you had to kind of push guys to do? Because I don't know, maybe it's just me dealing with younger teenagers, but I hear more stuff after the fact, and even though we talk about that a lot, I don't know if there's a barrier there that we need to break down somehow, but getting kids to advocate for themselves, I guess. So I don't know if you ran into any of that when you first started the open door policy or not.
So what the trend that I've noticed is, really, the older they get, the more time they spend in my office.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
the
that
freshmen are
makes
always
sense.
hesitant to come into the office, but the juniors and seniors feel more comfortable with me and around what we're doing, and those
Okay.
guys just come in and they'll hang out here for an hour.
Okay.
Um,
No, I love
so
that.
yeah.
So, with that, let's get into. So you got your preseason template down, and are you guys on normal February, middle of February? Do you guys go south to play any games, or you guys stay pretty local?
So we go down to Shenandoah in Northern
Okay.
Virginia to play in mid-February,
Okay.
and then for spring break, usually first week of March, we go down to Florida.
Oh, awesome! Love that. So that's its own journey in itself, because you guys are on the road for how long?
Yeah, we're on the road usually for our first probably 14 or 15 games. And then even when
Oof.
we get back from Florida, usually we're about 10 days to 2 weeks behind weather wise than the Philadelphia schools. So
Okay.
Philadelphia is about a 2 hour drive. we'll usually play our first 4 to 5, 6 or games back from Florida on the road, just
Okay.
because I think we have a better shot to get those in. We're still dealing with freeze thaw, in early mid-March here, and depending on the
Mm-hmm.
year, we may or may not be able to get on the field. So a good bulk of the first part of the season is on the road.
So with that, you guys obviously road warriors. Is there any prep that goes into playing that many games on the road? I mean, obviously staying overnight and doing different things like that, but even just like we don't have our home advantage of, hey, we can, wake up in our beds, or we've got, we know when we can go in the locker room. We know like all the comforts that come with playing at home. Is there any prep that goes into you preparing guys for that?
Yeah, we talk about it, and I want them to wear that as a badge of honor. You have two choices, right? You can complain about it, or you can use it to your advantage. And what I want to try and do is make our kids both physically and mentally tougher and use it to their advantage. And they're like, okay, doesn't matter, because at the end of the year, at playoff time, you're in all likelihood going to end up having to do similar things and be on the road. Anyway, this past year at the World Series, again, we played 8 games in 7 days. You're in a hotel for 9 nights, and so that's wearing on you.
Sure.
And I want our guys to be prepared for that. So we use our Florida trip as a way to do that. And everybody's like, the Florida thing is interesting. It's the most difficult week of my life every single year.
Mm.
Everybody thinks, oh, you get to go to Florida, you get out of the weather, and the
Mm-hmm.
baseball stuff is easy. The 3 or 4 hours you're on the baseball field, it's easy. The weather's great, and the baseball runs itself. It's the 20 other hours of the day that you got to worry about feeding them and
Mm-hmm.
making sure they're not getting into trouble and all that other stuff that wears on the coaching staff. But yeah, we use that to our advantage, and I think our guys have bought into that.
Sure. No, that makes a ton of sense. We do a spring break trip every year, and it's the same thing. It's like the kids love it, and it's the most stressful week probably of our season, just making sure that they're doing the right things. But yeah, so with that, let's talk about what the end season looks like for you. I think we're all trying to, and I know it seems like so long from now that we'll be in the middle of the grind. But what are some different ways that you found effective, of ways to develop players in the middle of the season? And it could be like drill sets, or, hey, we really enjoy doing this on Tuesdays, whatever that looks like for you. I'm sure you've got some stuff that's hammered out, but this is mainly for, coaches looking to add something, or maybe young coaches that are just getting into head coaching that are like, okay, like I've been an assistant in the middle of a season, but I've never been a head coach, trying to, manage energy and development and arms and all of this stuff. But just kind of, I know that's a lot that I'm throwing at you, but if you could go back and or if you could talk to some of our younger guys, what would your advice on in-season development look like?
Again, I think a huge part of it just depends on your resources. Some of it depends on your facilities. Some of it depends on how much help you have.
Sure.
And what you can do. I would just say the thing that drives me nuts, and I even see it at the college level, is just inactivity at practice for a vast majority of the players. For me personally, I hate on-field batting practice. I think it's almost a complete waste of time. You have one hitter that's getting something out of it, and then most teams don't work at anything defensively during batting practice. We're different. I use batting practice when we are on the field as a defensive drill more than I do an offensive drill. So from an offensive development standpoint, we're doing a ton of cage work before and after practice. And to me, I tell our guys, you're going to get better as a hitter in the batting cage before and after, and that's where all our reps are going to come in. And at practice, again, game speed. We want game speed as much as possible. So we're doing offensive things at practice, but we're setting up very specific offensive situations, things that I think are going to come up in a game. We work on 2-out hitting with a runner at second base all the time. People talk about it. Hey, this is going to be the difference between wins and losses. We're working on it 2 or 3 days a week. We stick a runner at second base. We've got 2 outs, and whether it's a BP arm, a live guy that's not getting ready to pitch or hasn't pitched in a while, or a machine, we're going to work on that scenario. And every single one of our hitters is going to be in that situation 10, 12, 15 times a week, so that he feels comfortable in that situation. And I think each coach has to prioritize, what's important to them, and then be true to that and just work on those things.
Sure.
From a pitching development standpoint. And the other thing I would tell you, in the world that we live in and with what's going on at the youth level and travel and all this stuff, for me, time off. Sometimes time off is the most important thing. Mm-hmm. And sometimes if you can find a way to get your guys 2 or 3 days off, you'll be really, really surprised what happens, when they come back. Sure. And how energized they are.
Sure.
So, those are things that we deal with here. Again, it's weather related on paper. Mm-hmm. I've got a plan for every week, but that plan gets blown up every single week just based on what we're dealing with weather-wise, and you've got to have the ability to make adjustments as a coach, and we talk to that for them as players too. So mm-hmm. hopefully if they see that you're doing that from a coaching or a leadership standpoint, then they feel comfortable doing it as well.
No, I love that. And it's such a hard. I've really tried to fine tune this question, but it's so hard because we're in different. We have different players, different parts of the country. That's different every year. You've got you're managing energy levels, but it's just thank you for giving us some practical things, because I haven't really landed on a good way to say, hey, like what's your best advice for in-season practice, because it's such a hard question to answer, because it's like, well, that's 3 months of the year, and I have no idea which week you're talking about. So
right.
So, but no, that's good. So I've got a couple quick hitters. I got one more before you go. So you guys had a lot of success, have had a lot of success in the postseason, and especially last year. Did you guys do anything different to prepare for that?
From a coaching standpoint, we are working tirelessly. But again, the longer I do this, I think it's important that we give our guys less. I'm not trying to give them more. I want them doing whatever they've done to get to this point in the season. So we've given them less about the other team from a scouting standpoint. We've given them less from a workload standpoint, because we want them to be fresh. We just want them going through their normal routine as best they can. But from a coaching standpoint, we're trying to get as much information as we can get, and we're working pretty tirelessly to do that. And then we pick and choose the moments that we're going to give our guys what they need. But I'm a big believer in if you execute your game plan better than they execute their game plan, it really doesn't matter what they're doing.
Sure.
So we're going to work a lot more on what we do and feel comfortable in what we do versus what somebody else is going to do. Mm-hmm. But at the postseason, like, to me, it's crazy to try something completely new or completely off the wall. So this year, as an example, we just reminded our guys before we went to the World Series, like, hey, we've been here twice before. We haven't ended the way that we wanted to end. We play the game a certain way. We have a certain style. It's really important that you stay true to that style and that you buy into that and that you're able to execute it at the highest level at the most important times. And I think our guys did a good job with that.
No, that's great. And, I've gotten that answer quite a bit, actually. And having people say that over and over, it really, rings true I think the last thing you want to do is freak guys out. It's there's no other big game. It's just the next one of those type things. And it sounds similar to what you're saying.
Yeah, no question.
So I've got some quick hitters for you, and I actually added one as we were talking because you're such a astute person. So it's a little bit different than the question list that I sent you, but I'm gonna throw you a curveball. The first one is, you talked about competing in the fall, and you've given us some different things that you guys do. But what's a drill or competition that your players love that we can steal from you?
This past year I was working with the catchers, so I'll take one that we don't do a lot of off-the-wall things at any of our positions, but the one that we do that the catchers love, and it doesn't make a tremendous amount of this success, but they love it, is you just stick with a fungo bat maybe 35, 40 feet away, and you've got to have a good fungo hitter who control it pretty good, and they just set up with a plate like they're receiving and you're just hitting balls at them. And for whatever reason, they love this drill. And I stole it from somebody else. But, I mean, you can imagine your aim with a fungo probably isn't that good. So once in a while, they get a strike. But most of the time, they either have to block it or it's a pitch that's, 3 feet above their head and they've got to field that one. I don't know what it is about this drill, but they compete and make a game out of it themselves. And they love that drill and they always want it. So they're like, hey, can we do the fungo drill? Can we do the fungo drill?
That's awesome. That's great.
So I don't know if you've heard that one before, but our catchers like that.
No, we used to do I actually coached pitchers for 2 years, and I was a great pitching coach because we had, I think, 3 or 4 Division I arms. So I was damn good at it. But we would do one with the pitchers. We had like 3 POs, and I was like, what am I going to do with 3 POs? And, in Texas, you go through your routines, and you got, you play 2 days a week. Well, 1 day a week, I think it was like Wednesdays, we would do PFP with we call them smush balls, but they're like those soft balls that kind of come hard at you, but they're so soft that they don't really hurt at all. The ones that you guys see, like guys hitting in the outfield. And I would just, they would get on a bullpen mound and I would just do exactly the same thing. And they thought that was the best thing. And there were actually some comebackers that they caught, which in games, which I was like, oh, that's great. You just saved your life there. But they like that one too. So if you want to turn around and do it to your POs, maybe if you're mad at them, I wouldn't use regular balls. But you can get them on the mound. Yeah, by all means.
I'm going to steal that.
But what about competitions? Like, I'm trying to make as much of my stuff competition based. And you mentioned you guys do a lot of inter squads and setting up guys at second with 1 out and just kind of rolling through those situations. Are there any other ones that your guys like?
Pretty much everything that we do that's live is scored. Okay. So whether we're keeping track of runs or we're keeping track of amount of executions, and we just have our guys split into 2 teams. It's team 1 versus team 2, and we take an injured guy and stick him on the whiteboard in the dugout, and he draws a line halfway down the middle, and we're keeping score. And our guys like that. And then at the end, you can do what you want with it, right? I mean, you can declare a winner or a loser. You can, have something that the loser needs to do afterwards or however you work it. But in pretty much everything that we do, we're going to try and keep score and declare a winner or a loser and compete.
Okay. What do the losers get?
No pride and a night to think about it, and then sometimes obviously there's some burpees or whatever else associated with that. But so our fall series, I think this is a cool one, and again I think they took this from somebody else. But the fall World Series that we play, whether it's 11 or 13 game series, the losing team has to make dinner for the winning team. Okay. After the series, so there's all kinds of creative things that you can do. But
that's good. Next question is, what's something that you've learned lately? Lately could be within the last month, week, day, year, that you feel like has made you better at your job?
I don't know. That's tough to say because I haven't really been around the game too much since we were done playing for the last month. On the road, we're out recruiting and talking to coaches that way. But just reiterate maybe something that is a mistake that I made as a young coach is, I was trying to impress as much information as I could. When I first got into this, I had a 100-page handbook with everything that we wanted to do in it that I gave to our guys, and I threw all that stuff out. And just, again, keeping it simple. The guys are going to go online and wherever they go to get their information. And I feel like if we're giving them more at practice, they end up just getting confused and it just becomes too much to handle. So the more people that I talk to, they echo that sentiment as well. Just trying to keep things as simple as you can for guys. I've had success with that.
Okay, perfect. And then really the last one is you've got, coaches that are listening. Most of the population that that listen to podcasts are trying to learn, get better. If you've got any advice, any books, any conferences, like anything that you want to just, what are something that you may be digging into or something that you're researching or just any advice on the personal development side. I'm just going to, you can take that wherever you want to. And it could be like you mentioned, decompressing and being able to just being able to get away from the game for a little while. But however you want to take that, by all means.
I'd say really there's 2 things that come to the forefront of what I'm thinking in this is just again, there's so much good information out there and technology and all that stuff that's going on. It's not that I'm not buying into that stuff. It's that the more I see all of that stuff, the less important I think most of it is. I think that culture piece, the leadership piece, I am obsessed with leadership. And again, when I was a young coach, I had a lot of conversations with a lot of people, and I just thought that leadership was something that was innate and that could not be taught. And obviously that's furthest from the truth. And the more people I speak to, not only in the baseball field, but other coaching professions, outside of the coaching profession, there are so many things from the business world and everybody that runs any type of organization that can influence what you do in your organization. So I'm obsessed with just talking to as many people as I can about those things and trying to bring in their ideas and be able to apply it to what we do. I've been going to the ABCA convention and all the barnstorming clinics, and you get up there and you listen to all these guys talk, and they all have great information, and I'm trying to take a nugget or two from everybody, because what they're doing at most Division I programs, I can't do at our program because of resources or limitations that we have or whatever. So I'm just trying to pick, a thing or two that we can take and apply to our thing. And that's just, as a lifelong learner, I'm trying to learn from other people, but I'm also trying to learn from our guys. And I think I've done a better job in the last few years of learning from our guys. They're away for the summer now for 3 months, and they're dealing with different strength people and different baseball people. And so when they come back, I'm anxious to hear about what they've learned and see if what they've learned are things that we can input into our program that makes sense for us.
No doubt. Well, I'm going to let you, kind of talk to our guys. If there's anything else that you'd like to say before you go, anything else that we didn't hit on, the mic is yours, and then we'll roll the outro and get out of here.
I don't think so. I think it was great. I really appreciate you taking the time to have me on. I think some of these questions are fantastic, and some of the things that you're trying to get at are really good. So I don't know that I would have anything that's too important to add.
Thank you so much for listening to Ahead of the Curve. If you would do us a huge favor, leave a rating or review wherever you are listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone and tag us on social media. That would help us so much with growing the show and helping others to stay ahead of the curve.